I have all these little sayings but the point of having money is so you don't have to worry about money. And,
Amen.
but that doesn't happen naturally, right? You'd think that would just be, but it doesn't. I mean, think back your own lives, right? I mean, you thought, well, geez, if I ever got to this level, for sure I'd be okay. And it doesn't ever happen.
Welcome to Brainstoke. I'm Tom Telford here with Preston Niederhauser. We are in studio in our Mountain Green studio, AKA Preston's playground. If there is sound in the background for our listeners, we just want to thank our local construction company for showing up after months to get their work done.
They've got a deadline.
They got a deadline. Yes, this month it's coming up. So first off, we want to thank Levo, a mind care company, for your sponsorship. All of the folks at Levo are doing incredible work in the mental health space. We're grateful for them. Also want to thank Bolt. I bolted before
I can see that.
the episode today. Guard, these are fresh bolted legs.
I bolted this morning.
You did?
Yeah. I should have wore shorts.
Well, pull them up.
Yeah.
Pull them up.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, Adam Barker and Bolt, you're awesome. We love your men's shaving products. It's awesome to see what Bolt's doing. They're growing, expanding. It's cool. Also want to thank, who else do we need to thank?
No, I mean, you're dialed other than maybe.
Come on. This is your cue, bro.
Dude,
Preston, for our listeners, has become the guru of Mogland, which is this incredible gravel bike by Envy. And Preston's putting a lot of miles in on the Mog.
I've got some work to do. I got to get caught up.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say this again. I was hammering down trappers 2 nights ago. I've was on my Mog. I'd gone up, done a loop on the road, but then hit Green Pond and East Fork. Coming down trappers, I've never gone so fast and felt so stable.
Yeah,
it's legit. So Envy, all you're building and creating and doing, that cockpit on the Mog is as stable as anything I've been on. So, Guard, you have a Mog.
He can attest to that.
Which we needed.
I would concur.
Okay.
That thing is that is an absolute rocket, but stable and
totally
fun.
So thank you, Envy, for again your support, sponsorship for what you're doing. All of our ambassadors. A little shout out, our new kits, the Brainstoke kits. A lot of the kit, Brainstoke apparel for the year. Hyper Threads has been awesome. Thank you, Spencer Story there, who's done some cool stuff with kits. Last, and the topic of the day is our sponsorship support from Cornerstone Advisors, which is Gardner Brown and his team in Utah. Amazing organization, Cornerstone. And that's why Gardner Brown is in studio today, because we're going to talk about his sponsorship, why we chose Cornerstone. But thank you, Gardner, Cornerstone, and your team.
Welcome. Yeah, good to be here.
Super cool.
Gardner, I sat in your office a couple weeks ago, and I was enamored by some what's in your office more than anything. Above your desk, there's two beautiful bikes, but leaning under the window was another bike. Do you mind kicking this off by telling us the story of that bike and why it's in your office?
Yeah. No, that's fun. I'm known more for the bikes in my office than the financial advice I give.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
I'm just trying to picture the setting, like live below your means, buy appreciating assets, and he's surrounded with like carbon fiber that's literally
titanium
downgrading by the second.
Yeah. I served a mission for our church back in 86, and in one of the areas, one of the members there owned a bike shop, and he was on the 76 Olympic cycling team. Doug Anderson is his name. And so we hit it off. And I spent some time in that area. And then after my mission, the next year I went back to Ohio. That's where I served, and raced bikes all summer. And I raced with this Doug Anderson, this ex-Olympian, and just the neatest guy in the world. And he had a custom-made Paisley, Mark Paisley. It's a U.S. made
Yeah.
chrome, I think 831 Reynolds steel. He had this bike made for him, and that's what he raced the summer that I was back there in '89. And Doug's now older. Unfortunately, he has MS. He's not able to ride anymore, and so he actually gave me that bike. So it's got a lot of nostalgia from my mission, and a lot of nostalgia from the summer that I raced bikes back east.
Yeah.
So really cool.
Yeah, I love that when you shared that story with me. Was that was that your introduction to riding bikes, or had you done that in high school, or where did you fall in love with the bike?
Yeah, that was the main. So my parents for graduation gave me a Bridgestone 400 road bike, and I was extremely disappointed that was my graduation gift.
What were you
right?
envisioning?
I mean, my buddies were getting cars and
9/11.
Yeah.
and yeah. But that was my introduction, was actually that I got that Bridgestone 400 my senior year in high school.
Okay.
And I started riding that around a little bit. So I rode for a couple of years, but it was really when I got on my mission and met this Doug Anderson, and hearing about all the old, in '76, road racing in the US was huge, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was big, way, way bigger than it is now.
Yeah.
Was that the 7-Eleven team era?
7-Eleven team era, right? I mean, they started then and sort of kind of came through that era. But that's when I sort of just, it started the bug of the cycling.
Okay.
Let me maybe read us in a little more.
Yeah. Sorry.
On Gardner.
Did I jump the
No,
gun?
you didn't at all. It's awesome because, the bike is really, in a way, I found both of you on the bike, and Gardner's, no exception to that. So let me go back, if you don't mind, and just share a little bit of my history with Gardner, because, in a lot of ways, this is one of those episodes that it's going to be a gift and a treasure for me the rest of my life. I'm not going to cry, Gard, not yet. Gardner is literally part of my story since I, was fresh off a mission in my first year. So I was a young 21-year-old working for Northwestern Mutual in their internship program. And it was an amazing start to my career because I was surrounded by these incredible racehorses, lots of guys, women who were 5-10 years older than me that I, looked up to. And I had family, a couple brother-in-laws, my father-in-law, was there. And yet my entrance to Northwestern Mutual was not really through family per se. I had already been working for another firm. And after Liza and I got married, I ended up, being at an awards banquet for, her dad, Steve. And it was that night that I had my eyes open to, wow, there's a lot of really sharp guys in this room. And Gardner was there that night. I didn't meet Gardner, but it just gave me a vision very early on as a 21-year-old about young, sharp, driven people. And I ended up ultimately, joining Northwestern. Well, in that first year of my, marriage, there was a lot of turmoil trying to figure out life, going to school full time, working full time. And during that year, one of the most challenging moments was that after, my childhood, we've talked about it on the podcast. I grew up ski racing, and I had 4 knee surgeries by the time I was 21. Well, my last one was just before I got married, and I had gone back to my knee surgeon, and this was after marriage, and we were sitting down, and he said, "Tom, you're now married. You got to change your life. You are not good with the decisions you're making on skis and all of your high risk lifestyle. You got to change. I'm just telling you right now, you need to change your life. And I'm like, well, what do I do? He's like, you're an adrenaline junkie. He's like, two things: get your pilot's license, or you need to buy a bike and ride all of that energy out of yourself. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not getting my pilot's license because I literally can't even buy cereal right now. And yet there was something about the bike. I had grown up, racing a little bit of BMX. And honestly, in the moment in the office when he said that, I immediately was like, I'll do the bike thing because there's a really cool guy in my office and his name's Gardner. And I'm going to go back and I'll talk to him and see it. It was literally making that choice because I respected someone who I had met and seen who was successful. And so I went back to the office and I remember thinking, like, went to my cube and I'm like, how do I even like go talk to that guy? Like, how do I like knock on his door and talk to him? He's really successful. And mustered up the courage. And I end up, sitting down with Gardner and he's like, man, this is awesome. And he was super encouraging. Go see this guy, Mike Hansine, was his name. I ended up getting my first road bike. And the rest is history, so to speak. It took me into something that has not just become a passion that I love. I literally love bikes and I love cycling, but it has become the thing that has allowed me to get through the stressors of life. It hasn't just been a love, it's literally been my coping, which is why we want to talk today to Gardner. So anyway, that's a long lead-in story, but Gardner has a history of mentoring and coaching and inspiring other people, which is why, one, he's here today, and two, why he's an incredible financial advisor. So Gardner, we love you. Thank you. I literally, this, but I'll say it on just so it's recorded for my future posterity, for my great greats. Gardner Brown was part of my story. So Gard, having said all of that, tell us about you. How would you introduce yourself? You're now making a call to talk to someone, in your practice. How do you describe yourself to other people, personally and professionally?
Well, first, thanks. That story means a lot, and I now can say I've officially arrived because I'm on a podcast. Like I figured, I never had enough interesting things to say that it'd actually be on a podcast. So I don't care if anybody ever listens to this. I can say
our
I'm on
7
a podcast.
followers are gonna love what you have to say.
I'm good. But yeah, no, I think probably the short is. My father was in the financial planning world, and so that was my initial introduction to that. And I think it was something that I always sort of knew I was going to do. And so coming right out of Brigham Young University, where I graduated, I started in the financial planning world, and I think I'm in my 32nd year now. And Cornerstone, my firm, is a full service financial planning firm. I think there's lots of guys that are really good at investments. There are lots of guys that are really good at insurance. There's, lots of guys that are really good at alternatives. We kind of try to bring it all together for our clients. And so that's who we are, and that's our firm. And the respect that I have for Tom, I remember that like it was yesterday. It had to have been 28. I don't know how many years ago, right?
Yeah.
But I just remember how sharp and how impressed I was with you. And I remember saying to somebody in my office, like, whatever Tom does, he's going to be a success. So it's been a long relationship that's been a lot of fun.
It's been awesome. Yeah. It has been. It's been 27 years,
yeah.
Which is wild. Gardner is understated to our audience, so he's always going to be humble. He's not going to hype himself, but I'm just going to say this. In the state of Utah, I'm going to just, because of my background in finance, because of owning some companies, having family, friends, just a network, Gardner is one of the most successful, if not a top 5 person that I know in my personal life who has been financially successful in entrepreneurship, just very successful. And yet he's not going to hype himself. Um, Cornerstone Advisors and Gardner is always in and wins awards for being a top advisor in the state. So I'm just going to say it because I know you won't, but I know you'll brag about your family. So spend a few minutes and just talk about, family, kids, a little bit of your personal life.
Yeah, married. In fact, let's see, what's today? The 2nd. So May 10th, which I'll better make a note of here coming up, will be 35 years. So I've been married for 35 years to Lisa and 6 kids. 6 kids now and 4 grandchildren and 2 on the way. So by August, we'll have 6 grandchildren. And 1 daughter lives out of state in Washington and the rest live here. So 3 married, 3 still single.
It's amazing. There are very few grandpas who have cheekbones like you, who can ride a bike as fast and as strong as you. And I've actually popped out of a helicopter on a knife ridge heli skiing with Gardner in Alaska, and the guy can turn a ski. So there's a reason why we love Gardner and why Brainstoke has wanted to build a partnership with Gardner and Cornerstone, and it's really twofold. One, because you're an incredible human athlete, and you love the bike as much as we do. There aren't a lot of 50-something-year-olds who shave their legs. It's just cool. I mean, it's our tattoo. Let's just say it. But secondarily, because Brainstoke is about the 5 S's. Brainstoke is about proactive mental health. Brainstoke is about striving to get outside and sweat in the sun and do the things that are going to allow you to cope with stress. And without naming names, as recent as the last 2 weeks, we have close acquaintances of our family whose spouse, one of the spouses, chose to take their life. And I hear about it all the time, whether it's a life taken or just lives destroyed. Financial stress is real. More men take their lives today than women. And one of the key drivers is financial stress. So that sounds heavy, as we kind of dive into this. I don't want it to be so heavy, but it was important to Brainstoke for us to have a mental health partner who can speak to those 2 things: coping with stress and having stoke for life of how to cope with stress by getting outside. So that's really the background and the premise of our Brainstoke partnership. So if you don't mind, Gard, as we kind of kick this off, would you mind just describing, in your experience as an advisor, how important is it for people to address the financial stress in their lives early on?
Yeah. I mean, I think that listening to you, Cornerstone, I have been extremely interested in Brainstoke and what you guys are doing. I'm a firm believer in I think the more we talk about this, the more that it's open. I think the more that people realize that, hey, I'm not the only one struggling here. This is just part of life, the better. And so we're super excited to be a part of this, and to help sort of spread this cause. This is where I get emotional, but I have very close to home for me, those that are struggling with mental health. And I mean, I struggle with mental health. I think it's all something that we deal with on a daily basis. And not too long ago, it was something they just didn't talk about. And so this is I mean, I love being a part of this just to get the word out. On the financial side, and the reason I think that's so important is I don't know the statistics. Liza would know more, but I think financial stress is one of the main reasons for divorce. I think it's maybe the number 1 cause for divorce. I think that, you think about what that throws into your daily life, worrying about finances. And so that's a big cause of mine. And interesting enough, more doesn't mean that the stresses go away. I think people think, well, when I have so much, or when once I have this amount, they think those financial stresses, the wolf will go away from the door. And that's not the case. I mean, we deal with clients all ranges across the income and net worth spectrum. And it's surprising how more dollars sometimes is just more problems.
Yeah.
And so that's a big part of what we try to do is help our clients get on top of that. And I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that one of the things that we find helps a ton is having a plan. And even if you're a college student just getting going, if you have a plan, that eliminates a lot of stress. Later in life, if you're coming into retirement, if you have a plan and hey, this is the plan, because you think about everything you're getting bombarded with the media, negative storms that can throw you, sideways. And if you react to everything you're hearing and out there and everything you're seeing, that's going to create a lot of stress and anxiety. But if you have a plan and you're saying, hey, I'm sticking to this, regardless of what I hear, what I see, that reduces the stress dramatically.
It does, and it's interesting because in my own journey, when I look back at 21, right? So that time frame of I was working in finance, I was starting a company as an advisor, right? You're really self-employed. I'm a newlywed, and that time of life became so stressful. Not because we had a lot of expenses, but because we had commitments. I was a newlywed, and I was so grateful being in it because by default, you're going to learn the principles of financial planning if you're doing it for a living. And so, that was such a blessing, for Liza and I in those early years. When you just said something, Gard, I want you to kind of go back to this and talk about it, because there is a general sentiment for a lot of people that if I just make more money, that I'm good, that the stress will go away. Where is that true and where is that a fallacy? Like in your experience, what have you seen where it's just not the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to that. You can never have enough of what you don't need in the first place. And so, as humans, we can never have enough. It's insatiable. And so you think you never reach that. Well, once I have $1 million, I'll be fine. And then you think, well, maybe I need 2 million before I really feel stable. And then, well, for sure at 5 million, I know and what happens is your lifestyle gets ramped up, your expenses get ramped up. And what's interesting too, we see is that people become more and more fearful of losing what they have. And they figure they think, boy, I could never survive on a lower lifestyle than I have now. So they're stressed about losing what they have. They still want to have more because it's insatiable. If that's what if you think that's what drives your self-worth, is just having a bigger bank account, it's endless. You'll never get there. And so we try to help clients realize, one, what really is making you happy? Is it really money, or is it the time that the money provides? Trying to figure out what's really making you happy. And then also, we've talked about this, Tom, in the past, is what's your financial capacity? I tell our clients, I'm like, I do not want to be sitting here when you're 85 years old and hear you say, geez, if I'd have known we'd have this much at 85, I would have done this, or I would have gone there, or I would have helped my children more, right? We don't want to ever have that conversation. So we try to help people where they realize they're okay. They're going to be fine. They're going to be more than fine, and they can help others. They can give to causes. They can try to remove the stress. I mean, I have all these little sayings but the point of having money is so you don't have to worry about money. And
Amen.
but that doesn't happen naturally, right? You'd think that would just be, but it doesn't. I mean, think back your own lives, right? I mean, you thought, well, geez, if I ever got to this level, for sure I'd be okay, and it doesn't ever happen.
There's so much there. So let's unpack it, because we started off talking about having a plan is going to help mitigate some of the anxiety and the stress. And I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, well, no, duh. But what does that really mean? Like, what does a plan mean? And when we were in your office recently, we were visiting, and you really talked about these 3 steps. And you talked about protecting your income, having a foundation, a very rock solid foundation, hence Cornerstone, a solid foundation. And then the 3rd step is, now that your foundation is set, that just something you can plan on, now you can start to scaffold and work into risk taking.
Mm-hmm.
So say more about that, and what is maybe more behind those 3 steps in a plan.
Yeah. No, I think that's, before, let me just, a little caveat. It's interesting because part of a financial plan is having somebody that you're accountable to, right? And that's just having a plan is not going to be that helpful if you don't have somebody that's accountable to holding you to that plan and talking about that plan. And that's where we come in and help our clients. And we'll have some that I talk to, like, I don't need an advisor. I can do this myself. And I'll say, think about the best athletes, Mahomes, I think his salary is $40 million a year. He understands football. He understands being a quarterback, but he's got a coach, right? He has a trainer. He has a nutritionist. You think he doesn't know how to do this himself? But Patrick Mahomes is just like the rest of us. He's human, and he needs somebody to hold him accountable, right, to these things. And that's what we try to do is, first, let's create a plan. Second, we'll help you be accountable to that plan. To your point, Tom, we see people, we always talk about building a pyramid. So you want to build this strong, wide foundation because life happens, and you want to make sure that, heaven forbid, you get sick or hurt or disabled, you've got an income plan that's going to take care of you. Or even worse, you were to pass away, that you make sure the family's going to be okay. Just have some good, solid strategic planning to build that base. And then you build up from there. Now you can start some good savings and putting money away in traditional investments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And then from there, now you've got this strong foundation. Now swing for the fences, right? If that's your inclination, you go for the startup or invest in a startup or invest in private equity. But more often than not, we see it time and time again, people flip the pyramid upside down. And they're swinging for the fences left and right? And then one guy hits it and everybody else points to him. See? They point to him and as a success story. But he's 1 in 10,000. And so we say, are you really want to play those odds and point to the one guy that was a success, or would you rather create a foundation where if you didn't hit the home run, you still are going to be financially okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Pete.
No, a couple things. So you mentioned got to have a plan. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then you mentioned someone to hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. How does accountability equal discipline? Or I think they're friends. How do they work together?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I think in the cycling world, if your coach puts together a plan and you're talking to him at the end of the week, and he's going to say, okay, you were going to ride 10 hours this week, and you're like, oh, well, I got 2 in. It's just naturally you're having that discipline to say, I'm going to be talking to somebody in a week, and I need to make sure I get these hours in so that I can, not be embarrassed about it. And our clients, I mean, we see what they're spending and we see how they're managing their money, and we're meeting on a regular basis. And I think that creates discipline for them because they're like, we know we're going to be talking to Cornerstone. We know we're going to be meeting and we're going to be sort of accountable. Sometimes they'll come in a little apologetic. We know we're spending too much and we're going to back off,
They're in
and
trouble.
they're in trouble,
love
right? And so I think to your, just having, you think about it. If you just, you talk to your wife, you say, okay, we have a budget. Here's our budget. How many times do you really stick to that? It's hard. Yeah, 0, right? That's how most people. But if you've got an advisor that you're going to be meeting with, I mean, we're counselors, we're marriage counselors a lot of times, right?
A lot, 100% of the time.
Most of the time, trying to help create accountability.
Okay, you said something a minute ago, and hopefully I can keep us on track. But you talk about this hitting a home run, and getting risky.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on any type of social media right now, all we see is that success story of that guy hitting the home run. We're going to see it tonight in our feeds because we're talking about it right now because of the algorithm. That's just what we get to see
Mm-hmm.
is all of these guys knocking it out of the park with whatever.
Yeah.
So then we think, oh, well, this is doable.
Mm-hmm.
I can be risky in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's it's just got to be a trap, right?
It's a trap.
Yeah.
I mean, how many kids have said, I'm dropping out of Harvard because I'm going to start Microsoft, right? I mean, and they point to Bill Gates like that's just something that happens on a regular basis, or Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
I'm just going to drop out of Harvard because I got this
There's
idea.
an army of 3. Mark, Bill, and Warren.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's a trap. I mean, look, I'm all for swinging for the fences and taking risks, but build that foundation first, and then go for those things because the odds they're stacked against you.
So somewhere, and I think maybe Tom's created this, and it might be from you too, Gard, but we haven't talked about it yet, but the third step of having a plan,
Mm-hmm.
being disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're got those two things figured out, then you can get creative and diversify, and begin to take risk.
Yeah.
And I assume that's the plan you try to teach us all along.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about that a little bit more just in terms of the steps, because there's a correlation that we're talking about of finance and doing it the right way. It's very similar to how people scaffold their mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this before, but I think it's important just to say, when people are depressed, when people are in a situation where they're struggling with their mental health, they're literally laying in bed and they're scrolling, right? So they're depressed. They're not functioning in life. They're scrolling on their phone and they're seeing Lambos and Gucci and they're just dreaming of wealth, right?
Yeah.
And they think, I can go from literally being depressed and not functioning in my life to now I'm wealthy, right? We all kind of we chuckle at that, but there is a belief of I can get from where I'm at, which is not in a great place mentally, to being ultra successful and wealthy. And in reality, it takes a lot of discipline and scaffolding, right? A foundation of behavior, a foundation of good choice making, all of these things before you can get there. To be fit is at a different end of the spectrum as being unfit. And so financial fitness really takes this, scaffolding of a foundation of discipline, and then ultimately getting to the point where you can swing for the fences. And I'm just going to interject a story because I think it's, it's helpful for people to hear. I've been kind of boisterous, on the podcast about building and selling companies. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that the day that I sold the second was in July of 2015. And, the quick story is, we had been building the company for 7-8 years. We knew it was going to happen. But the day that it happened, I was sitting in my home office and I still remember literally remember everything about it because it was such a powerful moment in time. I sit down at my, office, pop open my laptop, and I'm entering my username and password to get on my brokerage account. And the screen pops up and it's my balance. And it was literally the moment of recognizing I have sold a company with my two partners, and now my financial world changed dramatically. And it did. And I'm just going to be transparent about that. I won't have to worry the same stressors financially
Mhm.
as long as what? And people think forever, right? Your financial picture changed forever. Well, two things happened that day. Number one, I recognized I can either go on a bender of spending because my belief was and still is I earned it. So I have the right to spend it. So one, that's just I could. And now when you have a lot of choices in front of you, it's really interesting what your character and behavior tells you about yourself. And I was super reflective in the moment of just like, I could do this, I could do that. But you know what my head, immediately took me to? But that's not my plan. So to Gardner's point about a foundation of the plan, my plan right there in that moment was get out of debt. So even though in my head I'm like 7 carbon fiber bikes, I'm gonna buy new. Like I had so many things I wanted, but I knew that the plan was going to keep me grounded to who I was and my values, and more importantly, my marriage, like what we valued together, regardless of the dollar amount. So the plan kept us grounded. The second thing that I learned that day about money was um, lifestyle is scalable, meaning all of a sudden what I could afford dramatically changed like that. And I realized in that moment, you can make 100,000 a year, you can make 1 million a year, you can make 10 million a year, and you can spend 100,000, you can spend 1 million, and you can spend 10 million. And even if you make 10 and you spend 10, you're still not living below your means.
Yeah. You're on the treadmill.
So to Gardner's point, like it doesn't wealth and money doesn't all of a sudden show up and your stress goes away. What's interesting, and I want to talk to you about this, maybe we can pivot a little bit, Gard, but as recent as the last few months, I've sat with 100 millionaires, even a few billionaires. And one guy in particular that I've been reading a lot right now, just for people if they're curious and interested, his name's Alex Bean. Alex created Divvy, and he built it and sold it in 5 years, 2.5 billion. And I don't know his age when he sold, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't even like 35.
Jeez.
Right. So he becomes, this young billionaire. At least that's what the company sold for. I don't know Alex. I don't know what all was, involved, but he's so passionate about this concept that wealth can crush you or it can become something with purpose. And his whole concept in the book that he wrote, which is, what is it? It'll come to me in just a second, but um, it's called The Factory for Good. And in that, he talks about stewardship. So wealth is a stewardship. So Gard, when people don't have money, they're stressed about getting more. People who have a lot of money and are not letting it go to their head, so to speak, is that what they believe about it? That the wealth has become a stewardship, meaning that they have a responsibility now to do something good with it.
Yeah, that's what you hope, right? That's where you hope they arrive. Because let me go back to your story, Tom, that day that on the second sell, when you sold the second company, did the need for the 5S's go away for you? Right? Did you suddenly say, hey, because there's a few extra digits in the bank account, I don't need to do those 5S's anymore. I can. And yet, because money allows you to sort of escape reality for a time. It's going to catch up, but for a time. And So that's why, I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but it's, the old money doesn't buy happiness, but I suspect that there's more unhappy wealthy people than happy wealthy people, right? Because they forget about the 5 S's and taking care of themselves. And then they start, you can buy things for a while and that's fun. But when to your original question, if you can now start saying, hey, I've just been given this for a time, um, I'll get on a tangent on this. I won't spend, but just a second. But when somebody's had a success story like that, and they say, "I've been blessed. I've been so blessed." I actually, at this stage in I'll correct them, and I'll say, "Don't you mean you've been fortunate?" And they're like, "What do you mean by that?" And I said, "Do you really think that God's up there blessing you, but not the guy that's turning the stop sign on the road construction? I mean, he's out there working hard, probably a good dad, taking care of his family, and but he's turning a stop sign on the road crew, and somehow you've been blessed. God's not up there, I don't think, picking financial favorites. You've been fortunate, and a lot of it has to do with your hard work and timing and luck and so forth. But anyway, so my point with that is that I don't think really. I think if we are fortunate enough to have more than we need, now we are a steward of it, and then what can we do with that to make the world a better place?
It's fun. I've never had it framed that way. Did you need the 5 S's any less?
That's the best question of the podcast.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
that's fantastic.
It is. I mean, and it's brilliant because what actually transpired was we made some decisions. We got ourselves in a good financial position. We did, good things with what happened. But what's interesting about it is that in being responsible, we took on this stewardship. Like we were fortunate. And what I believed about the money was not that I was, eventually it came to this. Like I did have a moment of like ego and arrogance, and I earned this money. And then just as quickly, this feeling came to me in the office that day, and this was the epiphany moment. Tom, self-made is a lie.
Mm.
You did not get here alone.
Mm-hmm.
And you had all of these incredible mentors and people. And that is, the case. You've been helped and fortunate by a lot of other cool people. And I actually, that day, it's interesting, just as a side note, I felt so overwhelmed by that thought of I've been helped and mentored that I made a full list that day. And you've seen it, Gard. Like you've seen my mentor tree.
Yeah.
Weber State University asked me now to each, semester to kind of talk about the mentor tree. Well, that day I wrote all of the people, and Gardner was on that list of my mentors. That moment was a reflection of all of these people helped me get here. I have a responsibility now to help others. And so the belief system for us of building some extra money and having the fortunate position that we did was not for us to now go on a giant bender of life, but how do we now invest the money, grow it, and be stewards of how we can, bless the lives of other people who, they may be turning the road sign, they may be struggling, hence why we started Brainstoke. It was like, if you have the resources and extra, what can you do good with it? So yeah, I mean, stewardship is an interesting thing in all of this. What else have you seen, Gard, just in habits and behavior of wealthy people who are doing it right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think they remember, going back, they remember the 5 S's for one, right? They still realize, look, I need to serve. I need to have some stoke in my life. I need to create some stress in my life. I mean, so I think they remember those things, and then they do see I mean, you guys have coached, the high school NICA. I coached for 10 years. Extremely rewarding. right? I mean, just
Yeah.
helping these other kids, these guys and girls, helping them go from awkward, uncomfortable. They had a choice of riding on the cycling team or band, right? And
Yeah.
and that was kind of their, because they weren't going to play on the football team. And so giving back to that was is the most fulfilling thing in the world. And I think as we see our wealthy clients that are doing that, are so fulfilled, so happy. But then we see those that they turn inward, and it's all about comfort creatures. That's what they think that's going to make them happy, and they forget, and they become miserable, and we see relationships fall apart, and all the bad things that money can do, we see happen when people forget, you know.
Can you speak to being content versus wanting more? And what's your philosophy on that? I think it goes hand in hand with what we've talked about a little bit, but I'm curious about that specifically. And the reason why is the reason why I asked the question is selfishly. I struggle to be content in many aspects of my life, and one of them is finances.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious where you stand on that thought.
I mean, I think we all struggle with that, right? I mean, I don't know if there's a silver bullet to getting to that content level. I think that's just an ongoing struggle that we all deal with. I read somewhere, Buddhism or something that said having enough is a feast. And how do we get to where enough is a feast? That's hard, Preston. I mean, I've tried to do that in my life. I've kind of tried to decide as I've made decisions. I'm like, does that particular car, okay, I buy the car, I drive it around a week later, 2 weeks later, am I a happier person because I'm in that car? And I think, no, I'm probably not. So I probably don't need the $200,000 car, right? So I have decision trees in my life that I'm like, if I buy this, it's going to be kind of fun for a bit, but am I really a happier, more content person a month from now, 6 months from now? And look, I like nice things like the next person, but I think if you're conscious about what's really giving you happiness, because I can tell you the $200,000 car, that'll be nice for a bit, but then you're going to want the $300,000 car because they're going to upgrade it and they're going to do some more cool things, right? And it's going to have more horsepower. It never ends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But that's a lifelong battle, I think, that we all deal with. I mean, I really envy the person that maybe that person doesn't exist, but it sure looks. I mean, I know some people, people that's like, man, they just seem really content with where they're at, and I admire that.
Yeah, me too.
There's something about the mental health part of it, right? Where contentment in a lot of ways, almost every day to me sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Like less stress.
Yeah.
And yet there's this other part of me who knows in my bones that if I am not progressing and putting stressors into my life, preferably by choice instead of not by choice, that I'm a better person having some growth, right? Just kind of consistent growth. Today, even after selling a few companies, I get my bank account is auto drafted into my savings and investment every month.
Mm-hmm.
Because I need the consistent discipline of doing the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's your plan, right? And you stick to it. And
a sell didn't change the plan. In fact, what's interesting, and I want to dive into this now, you said something in your office that at the time it struck me, and I've been in the industry, and even hearing you say it, I was like, wow, this is really interesting to really dive into this. You said, concentration makes you rich. Diversification keeps you rich. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, typically how real wealth is created is they start a company and they get bought out or they have an IPO or, I mean, you see the real big dollars from that. Or maybe they have a concentrated position in real estate. They're all in on real estate and they're going to do everything they can in that world. And then they hit a couple of great projects and things just explode from there. So I think how real wealth is made is a concentrated position, all your energy, all your efforts into one thing. But once that happens, once there's an event, then diversification keeps you rich. What we a lot of times see is if you hit a home run and then you put everything on black again, you may not be so lucky the next time around, right? Right. So
The chances go down.
The chances go down.
Yeah.
And so we're all about, that's where our firm, that's where we come in and say, hey, congratulations, you've done a great job. Let's take some chips off the table. Let's create some diversification across the global engine, economic engine of the world, and let's divide this up. But that's not an entrepreneur's nature, I can tell you, right? An entrepreneur's nature is I did it once, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
And so it goes against them. But and we're not telling them not to, but we say you ought to take some chips back to,
Yeah.
just in case the next one doesn't turn out quite the same. Yeah.
I'm hearing you describe it. I heard it in your office. And in the context of business and building focusing on one thing and becoming an expert at it and doing really well and then diversifying, that made sense to me. But it also made sense to me when I think about the Tom at 21, the Preston at 25, the Gardner, young, 20-something-year-old newlywed who may be listening to this. And one of the challenges of today is distraction.
Hmm.
So they are diversifying because they're so distracted. And so they've got energy in a lot of different areas. They don't want to make the wrong decision and they want the greatest chance of success. So they're distracted. Yeah. And so that day when you said that, I also thought, boy, I wish someone would have said to me at 21 or 22, just get really good at this.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on one skill, some expertise in one area and master it, truly master it, right? The 10,000 hours, which is 5 years of just learning to master something. And once you do that, then you'll be successful at it. And then you can diversify once you have that down. How have you seen that in your own life? Because, you're now into this 30-something years. You were good at it way back when I was working with you. So, how has that concept for you just even doubled down and tripled down in a concentrated area of focus rather than allowing yourself to get distracted? And I know you probably get 20 entrepreneurs starting companies that come to Gardner Brown and say, hey, Gard, I got an idea. Will you invest in this? It happens, right?
Oh, well, it does. But such a great point. For any young listeners that are kind of trying to, hey, what should I do? I can't stress it enough. You have got to develop and concentrate on a skill. You have got to, you have to focus on something, right? I love college. I'm all about education and being educated, but you think about coming out with a general education of college is a problem today. For getting a job, you've got to be an electrician, concentrate on being an electrician or a plumber or an engineer hey, I'm going to know everything there is about AI and that's going to be, but so to your point, Tom, I think they're just too broad based and they're just looking for, something that's somehow going to stick. And that's just not good odds. So develop a skill, whatever it is. Hey, I love sales. Okay, then you become a really good sales person and focus on that. And that's, I think, if I look at my career, I really I know more and more about less and less. I just have focused more and more and more on what it takes to become financially sound, and how do you build the strategies and the tools to help you do that? And that's what I've sort of devoted my life to it. And I think that's a skill that people are looking for and want. So fortunately, I have a job because they need the little bit of knowledge that I have is helpful in that world. So, but that's for sure. I look again to your point, Preston. I mean, people, they look on YouTube, they see the internet, and there's all these ideas and options, and it's almost, analysis paralysis. They just don't focus.
What's your favorite characteristic of a client?
My favorite characteristic of a client is somebody who cares about their family.
How come?
I think if a client comes to us and they care about their family, we can do an awful lot. We can really put together a good, solid plan that's going to not only help them, but it's going to protect their family. It's going to help generations to come. If somebody doesn't really care about their family, talking about life insurance per se, and I'll say, hey, looks like you're doing pretty well. You've got a good income. You've got $100,000 life insurance. You feel like that's enough? And if they say, totally, my wife is fine with that, she can get remarried, I'm like, I'll bet you that our firm's not going to be a great fit for you. And I'll say, we probably am not going to be able to help you out, right? I mean, if they don't care enough to say, geez, if I'm not here, I want to make sure my family is well taken care of, we're probably not going to be able to help them. And I wouldn't want to work with them anyway. So that's for sure my favorite characteristic.
Yeah. What else are you seeing in the habits and behaviors of people who are successful in doing it well?
The consistency, what you said, Tom, you saying, hey, every month I've got a sweep that comes out of my account that's just automatically going into investments. The more we can create automation in our life, the better. And that's true with financial planning as well. If we can, the most successful clients we have, 90% of their financial life happens automatically. They're not having to make decisions about it every, month. And so that's probably, I think, a top characteristic that we see. And I don't care. I mean, for the young audience, I don't care if it's $25 a month going into Robinhood. Just start.
Yeah.
Something that consistent, putting money away on a regular basis. And then that creates that habit, and then the numbers grow, then you can do more. But I think that consistency is, we want everything now. And that's a big mistake. We've got to, I listened to a podcast with Todd Peterson, Vivint, and they talked about Todd when he made his first $1 million, and he still stayed in a dorm with 7 other guys.
Yeah,
and he said, "Hey, I'm not living for today. I'm living for 30 years from now. Not living for today. I'm living for 30 years from now." And that he always had the long view in mind. And that's such a good characteristic of people that are financially successful. They've got the long view in mind.
When I think through the long view, there's so many life events that happen, right? We may have health challenges. We may have other obstacles that come into life, these other, challenges that we face. How does one plan long-term, but make sure they're liquid for the stuff that comes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know how I've done it, and I feel, I can comment a little bit, but what do you tell a client when they're stressed because the plan is stressing them out, right? They're not to the point where it's like, it's giving me peace of mind, right? I love what you said about your dad when he said, our business really is that we take care of people so they can sleep at night. We worry so they don't have to.
Yeah.
I think that's so brilliant. But what is it about, the plan that can be stressful that you have to kind of tell people, hey, you can plan and still not let the plan strap you?
Right. I mean, there's a balance, because if you think about it, if you're taking the long view and you're doing everything for 30 years from now, 30 years may never come. So if everything you're doing and focusing and putting away is, hey, someday we're going to be financially independent, that's going to create a lot of stress because you're living, hand to mouth now. So what we try to do is say, look, if you have a plan that is not only making sure you're okay 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, but it's allowing you to enjoy today because tomorrow may never come. So let's just using numbers. If you're saving 15% of your income for the future, spend the rest and be happy doing it. Right. So, and enjoy that. And we found
Budgeting to blow it?
It's budgeting to blow it, right?
I love this.
Yeah.
I can get behind this carbon fiber deal.
That creates so much. I mean, people, it's amazing because a lot of times you'll have husband and wives, they have different perspectives, and we'll be like, look, we'll tell the saver, we'll say, look, you're saving enough. You're putting away 15%. You're taking care of your future. So take that trip or buy that boat or whatever. If that fits within your budget, because you're taking care of the long term, that really eliminates a lot of the stress. So instead of living 100% for today, which is a disaster waiting to happen, right? There's no long term, or living 100% for the future, that creates a ton of stress. You're not enjoying now. So there's this balance that we help, that you can. And so, I mean, and the number really is 15 to 20%. I mean, if you're in the habit of saving 15 to 20% of your money, and you have an emergency fund set aside for an illness, you're doing great.
Yeah.
And now spend the rest. Budgeting to blow it. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When back in the day, that was part of my philosophy when I would visit with people. Do you think it's possible for you to get to the point where you make the right decisions and you're being prudent, knowing that if you do those, everything else you just live, just go enjoy it, like enjoy your life,
Yeah.
So, so I want to just ask you, as someone who is financially fit and it has the discipline, you've done all the things, like I've watched it from afar, like you're dialed. How important is it to, along the way, as you're building the wealth, that you're also addressing your physical and mental wealth? Because you've also done those same things. I mean, you're a rare breed of having those things pulled together. How has doing those things allowed you to keep building a business and stay successful?
Well, first, that's nice. It's all a big facade, right? When you see the foreclosure sign in front of my house, you'd be like, man, I thought Gard was in pretty good shape.
You're
apparently,
so full of it.
he apparently it was not. But again, I think we're all learning, right? We're all trying to figure this out along the way. But I think one of you asked me the other day when we were talking, what's the best decision you've made? What's the best financial decision you made? And it really was an investment in my health, right? And I bought into that pretty early that I'm going to take care of myself the best that I can. Now, a lot of it is really necessity for me. I've got a lot of family history of anxiety and depression, and things can get out of whack pretty quickly with a poor diet and not getting those 5 S's. I can get in a pretty dark space pretty quick. So I've learned I've got to do those things, and I've got to do those things on a regular basis. And fortunately, early on, I guess they became sort of habits. They just sort of became part of my daily routine. And then setting goals on the financial side. I always like to have an event out there. For years, it was Logan to Jackson. That's what held me accountable. I knew that day was coming, and I knew that you don't fake that race. You don't, so you have to put in the time. And so that created maybe some habits. And look, I'm an age category racer at best, right? It's, mid pack in an age group, but it kept me motivated to do those things.
He's also a world-class sandbagger for our listeners. Unbelievable. So no, I know you're being kind. I mean, you are strong. I mean, you've been fit, for a very long time. I'm curious, just an honest question. Has your ability to stay fit positioned you to continue to take on the stress of building and accumulating and creating a successful practice? Number one, your business, but number two, just in life.
Yeah. No question, right? I mean, I've heard your podcasts, you guys talking about the advantage of realizing and recognizing you can do hard things. And a lot of times that realization comes, especially for early people, physical, right? Like I heard your son Mitt talk about that. Hey, I can do hard things, right? So when he got on his mission, it was hard. He thought, I've been here before. I've done hard things. I can get through this, right? And so I think physical can teach us that I can do hard things, and it can teach you in a hurry. And then you can take those and apply it to life, right? And that's, I'll get in situations where, in life, stress, building a business, stock market down, and clients panicking, and I always turn back to the physical side, and like, I've been there before. I've been in a dark place, and I just put my head down and turn in and throttle up, right?
Yeah.
Is kind of, what it teaches you.
This topic, Preston, I want you to get your questions ready, because you and I have talked a lot about this, about just the stressors of life and what the bike has meant to us. But I want to say it very plainly too, as Gardner just described it. For me, when I was in my 20s, getting physically fit got me out of a funk that I never thought I would have been in. I mean, Liza and I were in a tough place in our marriage. Both of our mental health, as a result of our physical health, was bad. So our mental health dropped. We utilized exercise and taking care of our physical selves to get us out of a funk that to be frank, we never thought we were going to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a tough spot. What's interesting about that is that all of the habits of taking care of ourselves physically, it became such a part of us. And what I recognized is that the thing that got me out of the funk became the superpower.
Mm.
And today, people ask me all the time, like, you're racing bikes all the time, like you're fit, like they want to talk about the physical fitness. And I love bikes, don't get me wrong. And I love to go out and sweat, and I'm competitive on the bike, but I keep riding bikes and I stay active because I'm swinging for the fences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just going to say it transparently.
Yeah.
I'm swinging for the financial fences, in building and starting companies and doing the things that I'm doing today. I'm capable of doing them and stomaching it and going to bed at night because I have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that physically I'm not going to be crashed.
Yeah.
Because I am doing those things. I'm getting the serotonin in my life in the ways that I need to. And that is magic for dispelling stress.
Yeah.
So in the financial markets, and this, the terms, constantly are the peak and the trough, the peak of the market and the trough when it drops. Well, I think and apply that same concept about the peak and trough of just stress. Are you capable of dealing with the peaks and the troughs of stress and coping in life? And when I'm doing the 5 S's, my ability to have the trough be less deep and longer is significantly greater when I'm doing the 5 S's.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Preston, if you have a question on that or comment, because you and I talk about stress often, but I want to hear, Gard, your reaction to that of just the peak and the trough of stress.
No, I mean 100%. I've always joked, and maybe I shouldn't joke that doing the 5S's, riding my bike or doing something hard, exercising, whatever that might be, has always been my therapy. But I mean, it's how I've always coped. But I think the challenge that as I look back on all of those times where um, I struggled with coping, I find myself in some type of funk, whatever that might be. Probably work stress, financial stress, more than likely is the cause of it. And figuring out how to get out of that funk is still the hardest part. Even though I know how good I feel when I go ride my bike with my friends or with my kids, or I go on a hike with my wife or whatever, there's still the funk. It still exists, and figuring out how to get out of that, I think is still the challenge. And I'm guessing that's what a lot of our listeners probably deal with too, is getting in that funk. And how do I get out of it so I can experience the 5S's more?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a simplistic view. I mean, I think that when people ask me, how have you been able to do this on such a consistent level? And I'll say, find good friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's the number one. I've got friends, you guys have friends that you go in those troughs, you don't feel like doing this, but Tom's going to call you and he's going to say, Preston, hey, are we good for 6:30 tomorrow morning? And you're like, it's the last thing in the world I feel like doing, but you show up.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think for those that are saying, hey, how do I start this process of kind of becoming physically a little bit stronger and start down that road? It's find a friend and do it together. Somebody that's going to hold you accountable, that gets you out of those, because we all go through them.
Yeah.
And so having somebody, I've got a couple of friends that have been lifelong. They send me a text at 10 that night. Hey, we meet tomorrow at 6 a.m. And I'm like, delete, but somehow you say yes and you go, right? So I think that's a key that I found is good friends.
That is so good, Gard. I mean, this week alone, Monday, I was stressed out of my mind. Tough day. I put my kit on, get all my stuff on. I get on my bike. I roll down the driveway. I get to the cul-de-sac. It's 100 yards away. And I turned around.
Yeah.
I went back, put my bike up, came inside, I was done.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just fried, right?
Yeah.
Next day, get on my bike, go out, 10 minutes. I'm like, I don't have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have it. And so then I put my bike, and then I was mad because I'm mad at myself. Like, just freaking go, man. Like, it was almost the walk of shame. We call it the walk of shame in our house. Like, you were gone 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, you worked hard, did you?
Every little bit counts.
Yeah, good intervals, dude.
Yeah.
But Wednesday, I rode for an hour and a half and I had it. And yesterday I rode for 2 and I had it. And I want to say that you guys can comment, but there are going to be days you don't have it. Financially, earnings, you may have lost your job, whatever it is, there are just some days you don't have it. But as soon as you can, get back to the S's, get back to fighting, and in reality that day I didn't go ride my bike, but I did come back in and stretch, and I have the energy to go ride my bike, but I did something, just, I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but the reality is there's just going to be days you don't have it.
I mean, the only thing I would throw in there, I didn't think of this, but I remember listening to a gal who struggled with these things, and she came to an epiphany when she was just sitting watching the ocean and watching the tide, and she watched the tide go out, she watched the tide come in, and she likened that to her own mental health, and she said, "There's times when the tide's out, and I'm down, but you know what? The tide's going to come back in, and I'm going to feel better." And it's somehow being able to remember when the tide's out, when you're down, that it's not always going to be this way. I mean, what do they tell you in a long race, right? You're going to get through in those troughs. It's really just fight through it, because it'll get better. You'll feel better in 10 minutes. You'll feel better in an hour. And somehow creating that But Tom, to your point, if you would have been meeting Preston at the bottom of the cul-de-sac, you'd have gone, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you need that. That's why it's so critical having somebody. I mean, we all love to ride alone. I mean, I don't say you have to always have a partner to go with, but there's somebody that just creates an added motivation.
It's funny because Tuesday night is our group ride in our community, and I didn't go. And what's interesting about that night is I was more sad that I didn't hang with them and get the chance to see all of them. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, have a community that allows you to, we joke in our household, there's two kinds of peer pressure. There's one that's bad and there's one that's really good. Positive peer pressure that, the kind that gets you, out in a community doing things that are positive for you. I think that's so good.
Yep.
Gard, in a world where it's hard to talk about mental health, it's also hard to talk about money. So what's the equivalent to having your tribe that gets you out on bikes or gets you out doing things? How do people have the same idea or positive peer pressure when it comes to money? I mean, is that the advisor role?
It's got to be, right? I think so, because I think most people, they're not inclined to financials, reasonably private. People aren't generally open to talking to all their buddies about it, right? And especially those that
don't get
are
to see people in their financial spandex very often.
Yeah,
do you?
yeah. Maybe not be.
It's
And we're always comparing, right? And so we feel like, geez, if I'm not at their level, I'm a failure. And so I think that's where the advisor really is valuable. That's somebody that you can really talk to. They're not going to share your situation with others, and that's where you can get good feedback and that accountability. I mean, you might have a friend that you can turn to, but that's tough. Right? It's hard. You can talk about generalities, but if you don't, I mean, people that have done really well, they're okay talking about their stuff, right?
Yeah.
But that's
I
not.
baited you a little bit, but I wanted you to say that because I believe that with all my heart that that is the role of the advisor, and that's the value that you get, is that you're showing up with someone who is going to be honest with you where you're at, meet you where you're at. And for me, I mean, I'm licensed to do financial planning. I'm a registered investment advisor and I have other advisors around me. It keeps you honest. It keeps you sharp to be doing um, the things that that you talk yourself out of. I just described talking myself out of 2 bike rides this week, right?
Yeah.
I talk myself into stupid investments all the time, right? And I'm trained to do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't endorse that enough for people that if you don't have an advisor in your life, and I know that you see it on TV and there's, brokers and insurance people, that it's a confusing world out there, but find a good human who lives the principles and then go see that person. I get asked all the time, well, who should I go see? And the answer is someone who is not driving the Lambo, right? Someone who doesn't have a 50,000 square. Why, and I'm not saying that you can't be a great advisor and also have a big life. Like they exist everywhere. I'm just saying who you believe embodies the principles of who you want to become. Right. And for most, that's the millionaire next door.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
What else, Prez?
No, I think Gard's awesome. As I'm sitting here thinking about just Gardner as a human and as a person, and why I want to align with Gard is the interactions I've had outside of his office with him have been like this winter. I'm skinning and we cross paths, and there he is with his daughter. Headlamps on, it's dark, it's early in the morning, and he and his daughter are having an awesome time. I don't know. That's why I love Gardner. I think he's a great human. He's doing cool things. He's got something pretty sweet on the calendar. And as I talk to him every year, I'm doing this race with my son. I'm doing this race with my daughter. I'm doing this race with my other son. We're doing this as a family of 6. We're all participating in this event. I don't know. It's just really refreshing to interact with Gardner. And no wonder the characteristic that he loves most about his clients is how they care about his family, because I think that's Gardner.
Yeah.
More than anything.
I agree. It's pretty cool to jump out of a helicopter, and Gardner followed me and his son followed him. And in my head, I'm like, okay, silver spoon skier.
Yeah, I'm 57.
Where do you go from here?
Yeah, he's 20.
Like, my kids are like, hey, I'm going to go to Nordic Valley tomorrow. I'm like, oh, I'm going helicopter skiing with Gardner and his son. Oh, speaking of
the
which,
truth of that, Preston, is they're the only ones that'll hang out with me anymore, right? So that's why I get them to go.
I'm buying my kids love all the time.
I'm buying their love.
100%.
Yeah.
Speaking of, let's make this a little lighter for a second. Just, for listeners who love bikes and carbon.
Yeah.
How many S-Works are in your garage right now? Don't lie, Guard.
That's, you're, look, I can.
He's blushing.
You can't head fake.
Let me tell you. Let me put it this
You
way.
said nothing's off the table.
Let me put it this way. I could have a Porsche 911. Or I could have my S-Works, and I have my S-Works, right? So, I don't, it's,
S-Works, plural. There's a lot of it. Like, you bring a whole new meaning to like polygamy bikes.
It's funny. I coach for the Davis team, and one of the coaches came by and they're like, man, it be raining S-Works over here. You talk about financially. That's probably my vice. I do love that. And then, my kids, they're not all mine, right? So the kids, are spoiled. It's like, you can't have your high school kid racing a bike that weighs 26 pounds, right? You got to get them the 22-pound bike. Yeah.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir on that one.
Yeah.
Give us your best, when you think of children, think about your kids for a second. Best memory. What has having a plan and building some wealth with capability that way, what memories has that afforded you? Not spoiling, just man, I'm glad that I had a plan that allowed us to do this as a family.
Money means different things to everybody else, right? Prestige and to some, and to me it means time. Money is collateral for time. That's what I care about, and I care most about time with my family. And so what it's been able for me to do in my small little world is to have adventures and do things that with my kids that have created memories that'll last forever. It started, I did Logan to Jackson with Josh, my eldest, when he was 12. I think he's still the youngest Logan to Jackson finisher. He was on a tandem. We rode it together as a tandem, but at 12 years old, he lasted 100 miles. I carried him the next 100 miles. I remember we got to the feed zone and my wife looked at Josh and she goes, if you don't start pedaling, Dad is going to die. So you've got to start helping him out. Josh did. But you think about a poor 12-year-old on a tandem for 10 hours, right? But it's times like that. It's being able to take William heli skiing, right? He'll remember that.
Yeah.
And you alluded, Margaret and I are doing a mountain bike stage race this summer over in Europe. This is what's valuable to me. That's what's been important.
But it's remarkable because you're under 60 and your health and wealth has allowed you to be in the situation you are. All of that discipline and having a plan, and like you said, just being consistent has afforded you to now be where you're at. I don't know. I'll just be honest. I don't know many people on the planet who are in the role that you're in. Speaking of fortune, like that is fortunate, to be in that spot. What's been the hardest thing?
I just
comment,
interject. It's funny. I wish I remember my dad said to me, I was coming out of college. I was 25, 26. So those that are listening. And he said, he says, you're going to have as much fun skiing when you're 50 as you are now. And you're going to have as much fun biking when you're 50 as you are now, and motorcycling. And I like, what do you mean by that, Dad? And what he said is, your life doesn't end. Younger generations like, man, I need to do all this now. They're all about, and doing these things like somehow, because when you're 30 or something, it's no longer fun, or when you're 40, it's no longer fun. And so, at that stage, I remember very clearly saying, hey, I am going to try to plan and structure my affairs in a way where I can do those things when I'm in my 40s and I'm in my 50s, because I'm going to believe my dad. And you guys can attest this. It's as fun now, right, as when you were in your 20s. That doesn't go away. But if you it goes that old ism that you talk about. I'll tell clients, I'll say, if you can live the first 10 years of your life financially like nobody's willing, you'll be able to live the rest of your life like nobody's able. So if you just recognize early on that you're going to enjoy these things later in life, and plan for them, plan for them early.
How many people do you see that you're working with who have built wealth and they don't have health?
Oh, I mean, that's the tragedy, right?
Is that the biggest regret they have?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, that's a constant drumbeat coming through our office, is that to the neglect of their health. They have a lot of wealth, but what good is it doing them? They can't do anything. I mean, I think, I don't want to pick on Larry Miller, but I think, you look at his boys, Greg Miller, and his other, they looked at that and said, it didn't matter how much Dad had. I'm going to take care of myself, because what if you don't have your health? We're all here 1,000 times, but what do you have? And we see that on a regular basis. So there's got to be a balance.
And we tend to think about that, part of the reason I ask is we tend to think about it as, I'll worry about my health when I can get past making money. I've got to go all in. I have to sacrifice to make the money. You hear that, right? The hustle culture says, go all in, live at the office, make money.
Yeah.
And then eventually when I get past that, whatever mark it is, I'll now start exercising again and eating right. Like I can't do both. And that's the challenge, right? And in my own life, I felt that way, young, of just saying, I'm destroying my physical health chasing wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it. And the blessing for Liza and I was that it was just so extreme that we had to recalibrate.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't afford to just kind of deal with it at the time and keep moving along. We had to take a major shift. But yeah, that's a major one.
You hear everybody, I don't have the time, right? I mean, that's the number one. And I'm not being rude, but I'm like, if I follow you around for 12 hours, let me follow you around for 12 hours today. I will find you. I will find you 45 minutes. I can promise you, whether it's the blue light shining through your window in the evening or the blue light on your face when you're at some point during the day, I can find you 45 minutes, right? And if I can't, we better find 45 minutes, because you're headed for disaster, which is what you're talking about. Yeah.
What's your biggest stressor?
My biggest stressor today is my kids. You thought it was hard when they were 2 and 3. And you thought it was going to be easy when they left the house. But boy, you'd long for the days when you could tell them what to do. Now you can't tell them what to do. You see them making decisions that you wouldn't necessarily agree with, but you can't dictate what they're going to do, and you have to just be a cheerleader. And the world today is tough, right? I mean, what they're having to deal with and what they're having to, the challenges they face, compared to what we did when we were younger, I just think it's so much harder. So that is for sure. And it's not just my kids. I mean, it's just the whole young generation. I just care about, and you just worry about them, and that the whole anxiety and depression and all the things that they're having to deal with. And I just don't think they were just not, they weren't there like they are now, for when we were younger, you know.
Yeah. What advice do you give them?
Well, my kids, they don't listen to anything I say, right? So it's like I had, when I was coaching Davis, I'd have parents call me and say, "Hey, could you tell Johnny this?" Right? Because he'd listen to me, but he wouldn't listen to his parents. I was the conduit, right?
Yeah.
What advice do you give them? I mean, I think all the things we've been talking about today, right? Um, Try to live a balanced life. Focus on those 5 S's from the get-go, right? From day one. Yeah, focus on your physical health, and develop a skill, right? Focus on developing a skill. Don't just think you're going to be a YouTuber and that's going to solve all of your problems. I don't know.
What's more important for your education, in your opinion, just, comparatively speaking? Because I know kids frame it this way. They want to kind of simplify it. For your education or learning coping habits, right? And I'm going back to the trough, right? The peak and the trough. The education says it's going to take you to peak earnings, but the trough is what's killing people today, right?
Oh, yeah.
They go to school, they get a great job, and the stress of all of it and their mental health drops. And now the peak does what? It puts them in rehab, or the trough, excuse me. And so it's the inability to cope with stressors. They did all the things that society told them to do to be successful, but they can't handle the trough.
Yeah. No, for 100%. It's creating and the coping skills early on is far and beyond more important than anything else you can do. And along those lines, I mean, that's why I'm such a fan of Brainstoke and Levo, and what you're doing is everybody needs a coach financially. They need a coach, physically. They need a coach mentally, right? And develop those coping skills. Because, man, you give somebody somebody that can deal with life and is a hard worker, and they're going to be just fine, right? They're going to be just fine. But you give somebody that, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care what skills you have, if you can't deal with the stresses of life, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on your mind, P?
My mind has gone to my own kids as Guard's talked about his, and we're in the heat of the battle too,
Yeah, totally.
and in reality, Guard is becoming a sounding board to one of mine, and giving him some advice, and he might fill that mentor role, be part of that mentor tree that you've talked about.
It's awesome.
So I also, I had the thought that, Guard has actually sent some kids to Brainstoke coaching, performance coaching, that he's had an eye on, and, that doesn't go unnoticed too. You're wearing the Brainstoke stripes, if you will.
Yeah.
So
I have to squeeze into that Brainstoke lycra, but I squish myself into it, and I'm a proud wearer. I think for the young kids, and it's just, and it's funny. Cycling is you, Tom. I heard you talk about it. I mean, for years I said I was going to write a book. I promised it was before I even listened to your podcast, call it A Ride Runs Through It, right? Because in my life, it's been the river that runs through it. And it's been, but everybody, it doesn't have to be cycling, but I think it's something, right? Something that creates a passion, something that's an outlet for you, whatever that is. And for me, it's been cycling, and it's been a fun road. I do have to say though that it can become, you can create a false sense of accomplishment in cycling, probably in anything. But I remember I had a friend, and he was literally on the verge of divorce because of cycling. And he was an age grouper racer, right? He was not making a living at this. And I remember his wife told me one time they were fighting over how much he rides. And he said, do you think I like doing this? You think I enjoy training like this? And it was such an eye opener to me to think, man, that can get out of whack, right? Because our wives think we're really cool that we can go do 100 miles on a Thursday morning, but they don't. They do not think that's really cool, right? And so again, that comes into the whole balance, right? Of, hey, you need to do these things, but you probably need to keep them in check too, because geez, this sport, like others, it doesn't, you name it, can become all consuming. And you think, geez, 8 hours a week's good. Well, then 16 hours has got to be better.
Yeah.
And you can get out of whack pretty quick.
Totally. I love that. It reminds me of Steve Barlow, who before, Gardner, knows Steve, my father-in-law, but before Steve passed away, we had the chance to sit down and we were, just visiting. And I said, Steve, give me your best advice. And his last advice to me was, which in a way is, it's interesting just what really drove Brainstoke before Brainstoke became it, what it is today. But he said, every day I think about feeding my pocketbook, make a little bit of money, feed my body, physically, he was talking about eat good food and exercise, feed my spirit, do something spiritual, feed my relationships, and the last one, I think that he was describing something to do with feed your passion, what you described. We call it stoke, but I think about that a lot, just what you described, like a day of making sure that the priorities have all been addressed.
Yeah.
So that when you go to bed, you don't go, well, I rode 120 miles today, but I didn't say a word to my kids because I'm too tired.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with it,
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that from you and I'm thinking, this is a guy who's about to go to a stage race with his daughter, in Europe. And like the memory for your children when you are long gone will be, dad's wealth wasn't the end game. It was so that he could go and spend time with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Steve would be proud of you, Tom. I mean, first of all, Steve Barlow was as about as fine a human being as I've known in my life. And it's funny, you think about that advice, he would be proud of you because here we are, however many years later, and those five, boy, I better not say the 5 Fs because the feed are now the 5 S's essentially, right? And that's where we're at. And what a wonderful, the more that people can recognize, there's no secret, there's no silver bullet. It's the daily doing these things on a regular basis and is sort of the secret to dealing with the world we're all a pleasure to or have the privilege to be in.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Freestyle, anything you want to say, family, friends, Lisa, any last words that have been recorded in life?
No, this has been great. I really hope that those, anybody that listens to this kind of recognizes that there is a way. You do not have to be a millionaire to be financially successful, and you do not have to be a millionaire to be financially content. And you do not have to win the Tour de France to be, a successful cyclist, or you don't have to win the Wimbledon to be a successful tennis. I think people just do your best, have a plan, stick to it. The 5 S's in good shape.
You've had your daily dose.
Yep.